Kinsey here.
Okay.
The social distancing thing just came out from the town. Safer at home.
Why was he so late in getting that stuff to us, the governor?
I don't know. I
Because he told Channel 9 like at 9 o'clock last night.
Mhm.
And then he waits to send us, because he explicitly, at least on the call I was on Friday, said, this is not for public,
Right.
consumption until we send out to you on Monday. And I'm assuming since we were on that list for the call on Friday, we'd be on the list to get it today.
But then like yesterday afternoon, my phone's blowing up because 9, 7, everybody is posting to their website the,
It
governor's.
rejects on Florida if you want.
I don't know, I don't want to run over it. That'd be.
We are on air.
Do we have everybody that we need?
Waiting still for Miles is there.
But you guys didn't get it till today.
That's right. And it was, I think to just educate our business community and let them see what the rules are. I think the earlier the better. One thing though, I did go through some and there wasn't anything in there that was too crazy. I really feared it was gonna be like, butcher face masks for hairstylists or something, and it was pretty straightforward, so.
Yeah. Who's gonna lead the collection? Is Scott on the call?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see him.
Scott, and then we also have our Safe Built partners coming
Okay.
as well.
Okay, well, we are going to get started with our town board work session for Monday, April 27th. Goal of the work session is to have the town board receive information on topics of town business. And the first item this evening that we're going to be looking at is the collection of building permit fees at certificate of occupancy. And leading that discussion is Mr. Ballstad. And this is in a response to the issue at hand and a request from some developers. So, Mr. Ballstad.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you see in the packet, I've got a memo from staff outlining some of the issues that would arise from changing from permit issuance to CO from the town perspective, and then also included in the packet is a memo from the Safe Built perspective. Obviously, since Safe Built is our contract building department, and they provide the plan review and inspection services. I think we definitely need their input for their fees. But as far as from the town's perspective, I think the biggest concern that staff has with not collecting permit fees at issuance, especially with new single-family homes, is at the end of the process, you've got a closing with a home buyer that, through no fault of theirs, may get their closing held up because for some reason the builder didn't perform. So I guess staff tries as much as possible not to put any conditions of certificate occupancy on single-family homes, just because it does involve a new Windsor resident moving to town, and we don't want to throw a wrench or be put in the position where we have to hold up a closing and they're not able to move into their house when they expect it. So that's staff's biggest concern from that standpoint. I would have the Safe Built team weigh in regarding their issues, but I'd entertain any questions that the board might have regarding my memo.
Yeah, and Scott, I'd ask you if you could, this is Shane, I'd ask you.
Compare and contrast to things we've delayed or deferred for commercial or industrial projects.
Yeah, as the memo states, the commercial and industrial projects are a little bit of a different animal. We're in that instance, we're dealing with the property owner, the developer up front, and oftentimes any deferred fees or any incentives are discussed with the economic development team. And those, we don't have that unsuspecting third party, the home buyer, at the end of the process. So we're generally able to be more flexible in terms of deferring some of the town's fees. I can't speak to, I think Safe Built would need to weigh in regarding their fees, but if we were to defer payment of road impact fees to the end or something like that, that's always something that can be considered on a case-by-case basis if the town wants to provide that incentive for a commercial or industrial project. And again, there are all kinds of different aspects of each fee as well. Obviously, the road impact fee can't be waived if it were deferred. I think that's a workable solution. But again, we usually defer, or we usually discuss that on a case-by-case basis when it comes to the commercial industrial projects.
I'd like to address the concern about closings because in most instances, from what I'm aware of, like especially when a developer is early on, there's not even a homeowner in the picture, right? I mean, they're building a house. Homeowners come into the picture sometimes pretty far down the road, and couldn't that be readily solved with some kind of timeline in place that we'd have to get notice, or there'd have to be a certain notice so that we wouldn't run into any closing problems from both, maybe from the developer because when they're building a home, they've got a projection and as soon as it's sold as to when it's going to be completed and done. So maybe there could be something handled in the timeline process that would prevent any closings, any issues at all with closing.
Well, I guess the certificate of occupancy is the very last step in the process. And so if we're proposing to accept payment of fees at certificate of occupancy, that is normally the same day that the closing is scheduled for. It's very normal practice for the builder to come in and pick up the CO the same day as the closing, or the closing company will call the permit technician to ask them to either fax or email over the CO so that they can close. So I guess if we're talking about deferring fees to CO, that is the very last step. And it's the very last, I guess, it's the last point in the process where the town is involved with the building inspections.
And I would think that the developer would have to have a different, upfront of what plan with whoever the buyer is so that they're made aware of that timeline.
And Mr. McCarter has a comment, I believe.
Okay.
Maybe he can help with that.
I'm really not able to help with that, Madam Mayor, but I do think the code builds in triggers for impact fees that are due upon issuance of building permit, things like park fees and road impact fees. Those are under the code built in as being triggered by building permit issuance. So in addition to any administrative fees or safe built fees, we're talking deferrals of impact fees required by the code to be paid at building permit time.
And just to answer I guess to add to the mayor's question about the developer's involvement, I just wanted to point out that normally the permit fees are paid by the home builder and the developer is no longer a part of the process. So the developer, once they've sold a block of lots to home builder A, then the home builder or the developer is no longer involved.
Well, I'm just hearing that, right now, I guess.
You guys haven't been seeing that issue, but I've been approached by many who said in the coming days, as it's going to get harder for them to be able to access money, you're going to have fewer of those applications. You're going to start seeing fewer of those applications simply because they don't have the money to front things up front. And it might be, if we want to keep at least some of that going, then again, we might want to make that consideration to have it come at the back end, because we still receive all of the fees. It's not like we are doing without, it's just the period of time of when we would receive them. And so, you know, I don't know if there's something in between all of that that can be had so that it can appease whatever their needs are gonna be and continue. I mean, we're already gonna be seeing, you know, downturns in sales tax revenues, property tax revenues, and I don't know that if we wanna see a downturn in permits as well. And I think that that's very realistically can also start happening.
Miles, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, thank you, Miles Baker. I would say that if they can't afford it up front, I'm not sure that they'll afford it at the end either. So I'm not sure how delaying it helps them, but I'm not a home builder or developer.
Lowski, you have a comment or question?
Yeah, thanks, Jess. I guess, Scott, what you were just talking about in terms of the flow, and the developer perhaps plats the area, gets the thing mapped out, but then he sells 20 lots to the builders, various builders. At what point, I'm assuming the actual building permit isn't triggered until that builder approaches you to start building homes on that lot. So the developer, it's not the developer issue, it's the builder's issue, right?
Correct. Once the plat is approved, the developer is involved through the completion. Well, normally they're involved through the completion of infrastructure and all of the requirements leading up to issuance of a building permit. Sometimes those are deferred to a builder, but yet in almost all instances, the developer is out of it once they've sold those lots to a builder.
When do we collect our construction use tax?
At the building permit
Okay,
issuance.
so our exposure here is, and I'm assuming they're asking us to defer all of that.
I haven't spoken with anybody, so I'm not sure what the exact proposal was, but I'm assuming they were talking about all fees.
It feels like it's
Mr.
putting,
Wilson, you have a question?
sorry,
Sorry, David. Go ahead.
no, well, just one last comment. It feels like in a sense, the town is putting itself in a risk position that in fact, this home that's being built will find a buyer. So we're at a position that there's market risk that if in fact the market cools substantially and we have 10 homes built, but only 5 of them sell, we're sort of hanging out on those other 5 until there's buyers back into the market. I'm not sure that's appropriate for the town.
Yeah, as I mentioned in the memo, we did have during the last downturn some excavated foundation holes and some starts that the builder, for whatever reason, walked away mid-project, and the town did have to go out, and we had the public works crew securing some unsafe properties that they stood in that kind of half-built state for an extended period of time. I think we had a couple that were out there for over a year.
Mr. Wilson, you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Kozlowski. It seems like a large amount of money and a substantial risk with taxpayer dollars. I think I want to do what I can to keep good going with our development community, but I guess I'd have to look at what are the numbers here and what's our exposure financially. It just seems to be, from what I read, and then my other concern is what it would do to our partner with Safe Built when I read that memo.
An actual white person?
He's raising his hand.
Well, here we've got the developer asking us to, or builder, asking us to subsidize them. Their lumber supplier isn't going to say, well, when you sell a house, you can send me a check. That's what they're asking us to do. And I think Safe Built had some real concerns in their memo about basically they're carrying the town. Who knows how many weeks or months it takes to build a house. And, they're on the hook and they have their ongoing expenses, their employees, et cetera. So I don't think we should be, going overboard to do this, really.
What's going overboard, Dr. Jones?
Oh, well, deferring it, basically. I think we should stay on the same, path we've got. We've got expenses too involved in this, and, Scott has said some of these builders have gone belly up, and we've been left holding the bag, or we would have been left holding the bag, so I think we have a pretty good system right now.
It's probably too early to know whether or not we have any type of timeline as to when a change would go into effect. Not that I'm suggesting that we go down that route. I'm just asking, staff or, Mr. Ballstad or somebody as to what the, should this go into effect, I'm putting the cart way before the horse here, but when would this be so many months out type of thing? I mean, how would this transition go into effect? When as of a certain date, any permits that are pulled after a certain point? Or, has staff thought about that at all? How something like this how we transition to a new system of operation?
Well, I'm assuming that the person making the proposal or the people making the proposal were meaning immediately, since this is it's an urgent request, but we haven't looked at what the timeline would be, but we would need to do some updates to the code, amending the building code provision that requires the permit fees be paid at issuance, amending other codes that Mr. McCarger referred to regarding timing of fees, so there would be some code amendments that we need to work on. And I would, defer to Russ or one of the Safe Build staff that's on the line to weigh in as far as what that would look like. I guess from a Safe Build perspective, to consider it. I know you've probably got to talk to your home office or your headquarters and work through something there as well.
Yeah, good evening, Madam Mayor and trustees. This is Russ Weber, account manager for Safe Built. I tried, to Scott's point, we've always tried to be a good partner with the town. We've waived fees on workforce housing and new fire stations and projects that matter. We definitely want to be involved in all that. It's not like we don't want to think outside the box, because we love the Windsor community and the citizens. We always have. I tried to bullet point all of the real issues that I see as an operating. We treat each of our offices as its own cost center. So we have to operate under a certain COGS, if you will. So we have X amount of expenses, and we try to maintain a working revenue that we can maintain the highest level of our staff. When I ran the numbers for just building permit if we had to waive building permit fees and retain the plan review fee for the town of Windsor, it's over $100,000 a month. And when we look at those numbers, projects, even single family homes, they could go 6-7 months before a certificate of occupancy is issued. So when I look at those numbers long term, that's a lot. It really seems like we're financing, the contractors. And to, I think, Trustee Baker's point, it is concerning to me that if they can't afford the permit fee up front, it opens the door to Pandora's box that whatever happens in the next 6 months, it could even get worse. So that's really what, I'm open for discussion on it, obviously, Madam Mayor, but we do have some serious concerns on our operating costs.
Anybody?
Nobody.
Can I raise my hand to something else? No, going off what Dr. Jones and others have said, I guess another follow-up question would be, looking over our report of bills where we, cut a check back to Safe Bill of those fees, what does that look like? Then obviously we're only reimbursing them those fees, obviously at the end when a home is, completed.
That's right.
So therefore, I think the biggest hit, I mean, not that the town doesn't have something involved with this too, I think the biggest hit is actually the Safe Bill, because they're the ones that are also having to go 6-7 months or whatever that, and I think it doesn't favor the town nor the builder, the town nor Safe Bill to have the fees not collected until closing, basically, or thereabouts. We're floating the bill. The Safe Bill's also trying to go however many months that might be, and with a cooling economy, housing market like we might have, I think that really, to Russ's point, that's really gonna put Safe Bill in the bind of not knowing when those fees are gonna come in for all the work that's been done from when the permit was pulled until whenever it's sold. So it's, that's, we've seen those checks. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one that looks at the bills. Some months it's over $250,000 that, we're paying Safe Bill back. So obviously that can all change with a housing market that could be evolving as we speak.
Right. So,
Mr. Bennett, you have a comment or question?
Yes, thank you. I think we all appreciate that we want to keep our economy going, and we know that the rooftops or people in those rooftops make a difference to our local businesses. But I'm looking at unintended consequences. And like we've been hearing and like we read, there's a potential risk to the homeowner, and I'd hate to see the town do a policy that could leave a homeowner in a jam. There's a risk to the town, especially if a home builder should go out of business. And I'd be concerned about unintended consequences to the timeline and finances for Safe Bill. So I think maybe the intent is good, but for me, there's too many potential unintended consequences.
Well, yeah, I think what this does is it raises awareness that you
that are asking this question. And so I think maybe the best solution is to just continue to be aware and to monitor, as the days are ahead, that you might get some additional requests for something, or maybe even this request might appear again. And so if you don't want to go down this road, you might be thinking creatively, like what else you might do for that in the future.
I think what it, shows overall is how the builders in Windsor are obviously concerned about their cash flow right now, because I think through this last month or two, the housing market is starting to, they're still building the homes. They've still, they've got them moving full speed ahead, but they're concerned as to how fast they're selling.
Yeah, it's all going to depend, I think, on how this recovery effort moves and how quickly it takes place and gets everybody at least to that comfortable level again of back in business. So, okay.
Mr. Balstead, you had a comment?
Just wanted to add that, yeah, we are seeing a slowing of permits coming in right now. It's still fairly strong for what we're hearing nationwide, but the numbers in April, I think in March and April, we're seeing the projects that had started or were already in the process before the stay-at-home order, and we're still handing out permits for new homes, but it has slowed quite a bit in April.
So I think we're, with that point, it's a wait and see approach as things continue. So we'll move on to item 2, the Downtown Development Authority IGA extension request. And I think is Matt Ashby going to lead that? Sure. I just want the board to know and understand that the reason why this request is coming sooner rather than later is I have been
on the DDA board since the board's creation 9 years ago. And as they're looking to their future, there are some pretty significant plans and projects in place that the DDA would like to continue to partner along with the town and potentially some private partnerships as well. But I think that they would feel the reason why they're bringing this request sooner rather than later is in order for them to even be making some of these decisions, they need some assurances and want to make sure that they've got this in place in order to even be contemplating continuing some of those ideas. So with that, I know Matt is on the line, and we'll have Mr. Ashby walk us through.
All right, sounds great. Thank you, Mayor and Town Board, for having the opportunity today to present to you some information. I wanted to go ahead and start, and I will share my screen and present a bit of an update on where things are at as far as the DDA goes. And some of you may recall this presentation. This was our budget update that we walked through during the fall of last year. Looking forward to the coming year, 2020, which at that point in time we had no idea we would be where we are today. But to revisit some of the objectives that we had during that time, our goals are including design and beautification, which is really to make downtown irresistible. And during 2019, we experienced quite a bit of success, including the creation of a small facade improvement program for small projects. The corner plantings at 5th and Main were upgraded with partnership with the Parks Department. Streetscape was extended to include the Mill Project. We had additional crosswalk safety signs installed, and we saw work begin on the old Ricky B's building, now the Franz and Pittman office. Under organization, this job is about rallying the troops and enhancing communication. And we did receive recognition with a governor's award for a dynamic downtown district. We saw our social media efforts step up considerably, and that has been a trend that we've experienced here in the last 6 weeks or so as well. Increased media coverage and continuing discussions with our downtown business owners. We've also looked to propel investment through vitality exercises in promoting business and development in downtown, including celebrating the mill redevelopment, which was a major partnership between the town and the DDA, and certainly happy to see that project come to fruition late last year. The backlot design project experienced a setback, unfortunately, this year, but really was on track to include a number of large dynamic investments in the downtown, including the alleyway enhancements, which we did take steps to clear the alley title with participation and leadership from Ian McCarger. We also worked through a cottage vision concept for our block between 6th and 7th, initiated some lodging tax discussions, and are looking at moving forward with the demolition of 512 Ash, as well as additional parking in that location. On the marketing side, we championed liveliness downtown to really generate the foot traffic that would increase sales tax generation, as well as bringing business into our retailer stores, including events like Small Business Saturday, creation of online promotional videos, the NOCO guide, creation of a destination brand, and supporting the Farmers Market and Concert Series. So these are just a few of the activities that we completed in 2019. When we moved into 2020, our financial position was estimated that we would have just under $600,000 in rollover funds that were being carried forward to invest in future big projects. Our estimated 2020 revenues were $520,000, and that included about 50% of our DDA budget. That blue slice is the retail tax base with the town. And I will note that that is the essentially the funding that the adjustment and extension of the IGA would essentially provide, continuing for 5 additional years after the current IGA expiration, which would take us with town support through 2026. With the updated position and changes in the overall economy, we have revised our anticipated revenues down to $264,000. So I'll back up from about 520 down to about 260, effectively looking at anticipating a cut in half. And I think the dramatic visualization there is that the retail tax base from the town now, under the revision, accounts for 75% of the DDA's anticipated revenues. So I'll toggle that back and forth. This is our 2020 estimated revenues at the start of the year. And then we're back to the revised revenues, significantly less. So as we launched into the year, new initiatives, we were looking at targeted business recruitment, a streetscape assessment. We had discussed an IGA extension with you last fall as far as being one of the items that was on our list of things to do in 2020. As well as a Main Street pilot program. The streetscape assessment and the Main Street pilot program are likely going to be put on hold, as that state program that brings additional dollars into our downtown is reallocating some of their funds to more emergent needs. I do anticipate, though, that in our discussion tomorrow, regarding the 4th Street property, we may be talking about targeted business recruitment as one alternative for that site. And obviously tonight we're talking about the IGA extension. So looking forward as far as our budget adjustments, our adopted budget did contemplate backlot incentive. This was for the Brinkman project when it was still on deck of about $300,000. Expenditures on 512 Ash, facade program fully funded at $120,000, as well as some projects including the wayfinding installation and the alley construction plans at $100,000. With the revised budget, the $300,000 has been reduced to $190,000, and that would be in contemplation of our 4th Street payment for 2020. So this would be our half of the cost to purchase the building at 4th Street. We still would be looking to complete the transitional parking lot at 512 Ash, still fairly robustly funding the facade program. The wayfinding installation would be delayed or not included in this year's budget, nor would the $100,000 for the alley construction plans. We would still be looking at about $85,000 in contract services, and of that, $35,000 is for the parking study. Again, I believe there's an IGA amendment under your consideration, committing the DDA to participate with the town to that amount. So this is generally where we're headed. As far as 2020 projections, we have the 588,000 is carryover, plus anticipated revenues of 264,000. Our 2020 revised budgeted expenditures are 629, and that leaves us with a remainder of 223,000 rolling into next year. So you can see that we are definitely in a lesser position moving into next year, based on still trying to keep up with a number of critical projects, so that we're able to continue promoting the economic viability of downtown through the end of 2020 and continuing on. So in summary, the request is for consideration of extending the current IGA provisions through 2026. And this does acknowledge 4 agreements that have been made to essentially inform projects that have taken place that impact the current IGA. That includes the Windsor Mill, the purchase of 512 Ash, the parking study, and a pending agreement on 4th Street, whereby the DDA would fund half of that purchase cost with the town. So I think the take-home message is really that without the town's support, we would be able to achieve organizational sustainability. We keep the lights on. We would be able to fund some minor programs as far as continued business support and some level of facade improvements and grants such as that. But in order to really be a sustained catalyst leader, we really do need the partnership with the town to continue to enable us to continue moving forward with finding a new developer for the backlots and pursuing additional development in our downtown. So that is the prepared presentation that I have. I do know that our chairman, Dan Staus, is on the line, and so I would offer to turn it over to him if he's got any additional comments.
Dan is actually in my attendee list, so Dan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Dan.
Can you hear me?
Yep,
Okay.
we can hear you.
Here to know.
What do you want to
throughout the
add
years-
anything?
Yeah, I think throughout the years that the town and the DDA has worked together, we've developed a great partnership. And unfortunately, the situation that we're all in right now, I think that there's so much that we have in the works that is so exciting that we would like to continue to be able to do. And with that, we need the town's help and the town's partnership, and not only being a 50-50 partner, but also the resources that Matt brings, but also the resources that the town brings, and bringing together the whole community and making our downtown so viable, and also the experience that we're trying to create and our mission statement that we're trying to continue to develop. So I think in the future, there's so much more that can be done that we're so excited about. That's why I would like to see if we could get this thing extended also.
Okay.
That's all I have to add.
Who else do you see, Jessica? Any town board members have any questions? This is an action item on our agenda this evening. Doc Jones.
Yeah, Matt or Dan, either one. Just a couple numbers questions. That 196,000, that's a 2010 base, right? That we guarantee you, is that correct?
Well, historically.
Yeah, just to answer that, the guarantee, the base is $250,000.
Yeah.
And then the increment growth that has gone above that historically in the past several years is anything that's above 250,000.
Oh, okay, so you're guaranteed the 250.
Well, this does both. The current IGA talks about the base, the historic base, and then it talks about the increments. So it does separate those, Tom.
Yeah.
So you're talking about his slide where it showed like town of Windsor and it had $196,000?
Right.
His revised slide?
And was that based on what we generated in sales tax in the district in 2010?
When I read that slide, I believed he was forecasting a drop in the base and the increment, but that's a good question for Matt, but that's what I read into that slide. Was that it was basically saying that he's revising his estimates to say that the downtown will generate $196,000 in total this year, based on a downward revision of sales tax.
Okay. And basically.
Yes.
Okay, so that was.
That is
cut down for now.
That is correct. That we are anticipating that if all of the retail sales tax reduced by 50%, it would be down to 196. So to answer the question, and maybe this is an area where Ian McCarter could clarify. I think if the actual sales tax collection drops below 250, that it is the actual amount that is collected. So we are anticipating tightening our belts to accommodate a potential of a full 50% reduction in the total sales tax collection, which would be about 196,000.
Mr. McCarter, would you like to add comment?
I've always read the agreement to guarantee the DDA the 2010 base, which was set at $250,000. So the only thing that is at risk under the terms of the existing agreement would be the increment if sales tax revenue drops below 250, then the DDA gets the 250 under the existing agreement, but there wouldn't be any increment because the sales would not exceed the base. But the base is, we called it a base for a reason, which is that's guaranteed under.
You muted him. Oh, okay.
Let me switch screens a second. Under section 1.2B, it says that the town will collect and set aside the amount of sales tax revenue collected by the town in fiscal year 2010, and then with an adjustment for the CRC bonds. So there's no adjustment to that under the existing IGA.
That's good news. Thank you.
Okay.
I think I want a second legal opinion though, Matt, before we too far.
Sorry, to be frank, that's what it says.
Okay. Doc Jones has a couple more.
Okay, so basically, Matt, you get all the sales tax generated in the downtown with a guaranteed 250, right? So if it's 300 or 350, the DDA gets the 250 plus all the overage, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then there was something in here about town services. I think it was 35,000 for town staff doing some things related to the DDA. Is that a realistic number? Have we ever tracked that, or is that just?
Matt, do you want to tell them how we came up with doing that and why we came up with doing that?
Yeah, so as far as tracking that number, I don't know that we have actually formally tracked that amount. It was identified, and historically for, since I think the inception of the DDA, the payment to town for assistance has been $5,000 a year. And that has been consistent over at least my tenure with the DDA over the last 5 years. We did identify and have a discussion about having up to 35,000, that if there were additional services that were provided by the town, that would be, that would provide us with the opportunity to utilize town staff for additional services. And I would turn that back over to the mayor, who has a longer institutional memory than I do.
Yeah, so the reason why that initially started
Before
was,
we had an executive director, and when we first were created and we just had a volunteer board, the acting clerk at the time, Patty Garcia, actually came in, attended all of our meetings. She was the one who took roll call. She took all the minutes. If we needed anything to come out of those meetings in terms of, any paperwork that had to be done, she did that for us. And so we instituted a policy that since we were using town staff, they should be paid. And we should, and so that's why that was initially created. And then I think we just kept it in there, even when we brought Matt on, just in case, just in case we had to go down that road or utilize staff for some other reasons.
But typically amounts to about 5,000.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Mr. Baker, you have comment or question?
Yeah, thank you. I would consider myself an early skeptic of the DDA, and they have far exceeded my expectations. It's just been, they've done tremendous work. However, I think with 3 new board members, the fact that this is a year and a half away before expiration, I kind of feel this is premature to take a vote up tonight on this. I could be swayed, I suppose, but I just feel like it's a little premature right now.
Mr. Soslowski, you have comment or question?
Yeah, I've got a couple of them. I did send a series of questions over to Shane earlier today, and I guess we can address those offline if necessary. I guess I would agree with Mr. McCarger as I read through the IGA. I questioned it and said, boy, it sure sounds like we're guaranteeing them a base, but what is that base? It sounds like it's 250. I think to Dr. Jones' point, asking about it, if in fact the actual sales tax collected was less than 250, under that clause, the town would have to come up with other general fund revenues to top that off. So I think that's how the agreement currently reads. But most importantly, 1.2G, Mr. Baker, as you point out, this agreement is a year at least from supposed to be revisited. It doesn't terminate till the end of 2021. But the contract has a specific thing that says when you're considering whether to extend and what to do about this, you should review the progress toward the downtown plan, the plan of development, the downtown strategic plan, and presumably the capital improvement plan, all that were required under the original IGA. And I don't think we've done that diligence. I don't think this slide presentation is sufficient to say that we've really taken the time to look into the details. So that and a series of other questions, I think, Mr. Baker, I would probably agree with you. I think we're being asked to address this a little more quickly than we ought to. And especially the comfort to the DDA is they do have our support. They have it through the end of 2021 under the existing terms. I asked earlier if there was a reason this was trying to be accelerated. For instance, if the DDA was off to apply for a grant and that grant was saying, can you show me what kind of support you have and for how long? It would look better, obviously, to be able to say we have this until 2026. Or if they were applying for a loan, that would say, well, how are you supported? What is your revenue stream? To have a longer term IGA would make sense. But so far I haven't heard that that's what's driving this arguably premature consideration. And
I
probably at the end of the day agree with Mr. Baker.
Do you see anybody else?
Mr. Bennett, you have comment or question?
Yeah, thank you. I've struggled with this a little bit because I'm a strong believer in the DDA. I really want to see a vibrant downtown. And of course, like all of us, we're concerned about where our economy is going to be. But that's kind of the point for me. The present IGA still has 19 months on it. And it was built into the process, like I think Mr. Selesky said, that we would have a review in the first half of 2021. I don't know what our budget's going to be like. I don't know what the economy is going to be like in 6 months or a year from now. It could be that maybe we need to do a different type of deal. Maybe we need to, I'm not suggesting this, but maybe we'd have to do even more for the DDA, or maybe we do less because we've got other needs around the town. We just don't know at this point. So I'm very uncomfortable making a decision, locking this in for another 5 years with some of the things we don't know. I think I can foresee that. I think it was Matt that said that perhaps might have to talk about targeted business recruiting. So not knowing what the conditions are going to be 6 or 12 months from now, I think there could be some different approaches to the support of the DDA. I strongly support the DDA. I think we've come a long ways. I think we've got a good partnership. I want to see a vibrant downtown. I would feel very uncomfortable voting. Well, in fact, I don't think I could vote yes on this tonight, which is another problem for me because I think a no vote by me or anybody else sends a really bad message right now to our downtown people, because we support our downtown. We want our downtown to be well. But I would really support postponing this for further study.
Mr. McCarter, is there no flexibility in this in the agreement that if we were to move ahead and if we were to approve this, but let's just say some of these concerns that we've heard, approve to be true 6 or a year from now, is there not anything in that provision that would allow the two parties to come back and renegotiate?
Every agreement can be renegotiated, Christy. The concern is that if the DDA is using the commitment represented by this new agreement to carry forward its mission, and then there is a risk that later on those terms will change. I'm not sure what value it has to the DDA if there's a risk it will be diluted later. So there's always room for renegotiation. There's also, there are limits to how much the town board can legally appropriate in future fiscal years. This agreement does have that Tabor disclaimer that says this is all subject to appropriation. So even this agreement, depending on circumstances, could be modified simply because the funds aren't there to appropriate.
So that could be a somewhat a protection clause.
Well, it's certainly,
if the numbers.
It is a protection clause to the town because the town can't commit to multiple fiscal year obligations like that.
Right.
The 2010 number, when you think about where we were in 2010, that was a pretty low bar actually. And so the assurance that the DDA would receive that as the base at that time was seen as there's nowhere to go but up. And I think we've proven that with what the DDA and the town have done together.
Right.
No, I know that the town and the DDA were scheduled to try to go get that $1 million DOLA grant. And now that's, obviously that was delayed for another reason, not due to this. That might even, but I think you guys were gonna go back this fall. But that might even be delayed further, and I think that in order to be able to go after that grant, you would have to be able to show that you do have a contract in place with the town.
Well, we delayed that grant because, we didn't have, when Brinkman pulled out, and we didn't have the property being redeveloped, we thought, let's not go put $1 million in an alley and then not necessarily have a developer to fill that space. So, I think we would definitely need a functioning DDA, certainly the town, for many years bring the DDA to function and thrive. So, I don't know if there's more to your question. I think we would obviously want to have the DDA going strong though.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But they are really set for 18 months, right? According to this contract, they're in good shape with our agreement until the end of 2021. So it's not like something is gonna happen this summer that things are gonna change.
Right, well, and if it did, even Matt's numbers, his projected number of less than $200,000 in sales tax, I think he's kind of took our model of taking sales tax down 50% to just say what is the worst case scenario. But like Mr. McCarter said, I mean, that was a base set a decade ago. So one would hope that we do better than at least the base 250. So, you know, I guess if his numbers project true, then I think town-wide we've seen a very big shock in our revenue throughout the town. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I think that they are. I think when you look at the slides, the only risk I see for them is just the amount of funds they're carrying over year. You know, this year they started out the year with almost 600,000. His numbers going into next year are, I don't know, 250,000 or so on that slide. So their cash on hand is going down a lot. And, you know, to me, again, depending on the board's comfort level, you know, what this says to me is if the board wasn't comfortable moving forward and you really did want to wait until next year to do it, I would think we'd want to start out with a work session with the DDA board at the start of the year to really kind of set those goals and that shared vision. Because I think a thriving DDA is really important to the town, and I know the board members feel that way as well. So I think we want to make sure we had that kind of shared vision at the start of the year, so we could everybody on our board felt comfortable extending an agreement. And like Mr. Bennett said, even if it needs to look a little bit different, I think, you know, I don't think anybody believes at the end of 2021 the DDA is going to be completely self-sustaining and we'll be able to walk away from this. You know, I think that everybody should acknowledge or be realistic that ongoing support is going to be necessary for the DDA. But what that looks like, you know, I think maybe we need to have more discussions on that.
In years past, we normally have a joint session with the DDA regarding their budget for the upcoming year, correct?
We did have this last year.
Right. So that's what I mean is going off of what you're saying is later even this year, because the DDA follows the same budgetary cycle basically that the town does.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously this plays into our budget as well, so.
Right, well, I was thinking, you know, that since the agreement calls for a 2021 review, I would think, you know, we probably wouldn't want to wait until the second half of the year to do that. I think we should, you know, again, depending on what happens tonight, I would think we'd want to have that right away in 2021.
Right.
You know, go really early.
Okay, anything else? Matt?
Mr. Soslowski, you have a comment or question?
Yeah, hey, thanks. Real quick. Please, I echo everybody said in terms of our support for the DDA in downtown. Probably first and foremost on all of our minds is to make sure that we have a vibrant town, downtown area. But the other thing that we're going to need visibility on here is the impact of the declining oil and gas industry on property tax receipts and lost production. That'll start showing up in the taxes in 2021, 2022. So I think it's important for all of us to get visibility on that before we start doing anything with this agreement. So just another element that would suggest waiting to focus until early 2021. Thank you.
Okay. Matt, did you have any?
You wanted to follow up and say?
Oh, I just thank the town board and staff for the great support we've received over the years, and certainly some good food for thought as far as concepts for us to carry back to the DDA board and discuss as we move through the next 18 months.
Okay.
Thank you. I think that concludes our work session, and we'll get moving upstairs because it'll take us a little while. We'll have to
For those of you,
get everybody back in, won't you?
yes, for those of you that are returning with us to the town